Greetings and welcome to Office Hours. If you're watching us on YouTube, welcome. If you want to learn more about what we do here, visit officehours.global, where you'll also get the schedule for the week. Our first hour, we typically answer questions around virtual production and media. And on our second hour, we take time to spend a little bit more time on a subject. And today we're going to continue speaking about LinkedIn marketing for your brand if you're a job searcher. So you'll want to stay tuned for our second hour. And to our producers, go ahead and submit your questions now. And Bill, let's get into it.
Thanks, Liberty. Good morning. And our first question this morning comes from Jens Olson in Sandpoint, Idaho. And Jens asks, are there any good software-based noise assist alternatives for the Macintosh?
Let's start with Jesse.
Okay, yeah. Well, iZotope makes their spectral denoise, which is pretty great. And one of the reasons is it takes like a noise print. So anything that really analyzes what the noise is compared to the rest of the signal, we usually do a pretty good job. I think the question here also it seems to ask, something that will run live. So you'd want to make sure you have a sufficient amount of RAM in the machine to run any denoise plugin live.
Go ahead, Mitchell.
On the live side, noise assist is a tough act to beat. It's pretty darn good, but software-based that could help you in a Zoom call. Somebody had mentioned a while back Crisp.ai as a good alternative, and I've tested it. It's amazingly good, not quite as good as noise assist, but certainly one worth trying, and they have a free test opportunity there, so you can get in there and give it a shot. It's Crisp.ai.
And Alex.
And as Jesse outlined, really make sure that you test anything that you're trying to use live. Even though it's a filter that can be seen by audio hijack, doesn't mean that it can actually work well. And we've seen a lot of degradation and breakup and so on and so forth when folks have tried to use a plugin that's largely post-process designed for it. But I do believe that that iZotope has their own live version of it, which is a little lighter. That should go a lot faster. iZotope is the way to go, or Unveil by Synaptic. But that's not live. That'll be for post.
Next question.
Next one comes from John Nichols in Concord, California. And John says, thank you for the pro tips on making my own SDI cables. And he notes, I found a used Coastal Tools Portastrip for a good price. I am now looking to test the SDI cables. What are your recommendations for testers?
Congratulations, John. Alex?
There's a... it's hard to test them well without expensive tools. So in my opinion. So there is a digital forecast is a good piece of hardware that can actually test your cables fairly well. It's less expensive than some of the other options. So digital forecast is about $800, I think, and it will help you test those. It's a little handheld piece that will help you run through a couple of the signals there and for some reason I'm spacing on the other one. It starts with a PH, but I can't think of it at the moment. Is the more expensive version that we've used. The other thing that you can do is run 4K 60 through it from one place to the other and see if it gets there. So plug it in, make sure that you're getting to 4K 60. The hard part really is that the thing that people, when you get to making too many cables, the thing that really gets you is not properly crimping the tip. So people will get going fast and they won't crimp the tips correctly because you're kind of putting them together. So just pull at everything, just not trying to destroy it. But you'll notice that anybody who builds a lot of cables will pull at that tip a little bit. They'll pull at and they'll pull just a little bit. If it can't handle you pulling on that cable, it's not going to survive. So don't worry about it too much. But you're not trying to tear it off, but just tug on it a little bit, tug on the tip a little bit. Just make sure that they're all on the way that they should be, because that's the worst thing is it kind of works, it tests well, you plug it in somewhere, it comes apart. So those are the things to think about. Also, I highly recommend one of these. This is it has like a silicon end to it. It was tweezers, but I took off one side. And what's nice about it is when you want to pull off so once you score it with that Coastal machine, you're going to want to pull off you're going to want to get under it and pull it off. And this won't tear the shielding, just in case you're wondering. It's a little tip.
All right. John?
I agree with what Alex said. There's two classes of testers for all cables. There's ones that do certain simple continuity checks, These are the $180 to $120 testers you'll find out there. You could do the same thing with the continuity check on a multimeter, but that's not going to tell you if the cable's certified 3G, 6G, 12G. Those testers, like Alex said, are around $1,000 to test those signals out.
And back to you, Alex.
Fabrics. That was what was escaping me. So Fabrics makes a series of tools that we use for this, a handheld tool, as well as they have some much larger tools that you can use that really test these things. Now, the problem is the handheld version, $6,000 to $7,000, and the desktop version is about $15,000. When you're talking about companies that make cables and they're testing them, they're using those tools to test them. They're not using little tools, but the digital forecast ones are probably the best in between to really, if you really need to make sure. And again, the Gorilla version that a lot of us have used off and on forever is 4G 60 is really difficult to run through a cable. So if it can make it through there, it's going to probably be okay.
Next question.
Tim Mann in Melbourne, Australia is up next. Recommendations for a multi-channel Dante interface. He requires 22 inputs coming from a Sennheiser G4 headphone port or an unbalanced line out.
Go ahead, Jesse.
Yeah, there's a couple ways to do that, but one of the more affordable and ubiquitous options is just a X32 or M32 mixer with a Dante card in it. And also, there's other ways if you wanted to get sort of single rack units, maybe something a little small. Well, of course, you can get the X32 in a rack version, but you could also go with something like the RME just released, the 12 mic D, which might be a pretty useful unit that has a bunch of mic or line level inputs on it, and that'll do, two of those would do what you need, but more expensive price tag.
Go ahead, John.
Jesse for the win. X32 rack with the Dante card. You have to buy the Dante card separate, which I don't know if they're still available right now or not, but this will do 32 channel Dante in.
And Alex.
One correction from the last one, it's 4K60 or 12G. I said 4G60. For this, yeah, Jesse's right. X32 is the one that we use a lot for these kinds of interfaces. The one that we use as a 1U, I want to get all the stuff in, is the Focusrite. Focusrite makes some larger analog to Dante interfaces.
Next question.
Graham Cardwell in Belfast, Northern Ireland has this one. What are some good entry-level DMX lighting control software packages? We're looking to upgrade our control software. We're currently using the Chauvet Show Express in a house of worship with about 40 fixed light fittings and 4 moving lights for now.
Go ahead, John.
I don't know how many universes you need for all those fixtures, if they're just single color or if they're RGB, but I have the NTEC Ethernet to DMX controller, and then I use Luminaire as a software app on the iPad to control my universe DMX. Works great.
Next question.
Chris Widener in Lafayette, Indiana, working on ideas for getting remote camera coverage from the back of bicycles. They're being used as escort vehicles for a marathon, and he's leaning towards iPhones running larix. What would you use? Go ahead, Courtney.
Well, whatever you use, if you are going to use an iPhone, I suggest you get a good USB microphone input and get a basket windscreen around a pretty good shotgun microphone or a super cardioid microphone, because getting the sounds can be really great from a moving bicycle, but you got to worry about the wind since you're moving at a pretty good clip. So you have to have a really good windscreen to deal with the wind. That's my advice.
Go ahead, Guy.
Yeah, the industry standard that we're seeing out there is the Teradek, or excuse me, the LiveView line. There's also some models from Teradek like the Bond that are pretty decent, but you got to factor all in. So you're going to have ideally multiple cell carriers. So you got to factor in those plans. You could rent these things, which might be a better option. So you rent the Teradek backpack. The higher end ones, not just the $1,000 LiveView Solo, will have HEVC. And now you also need a place in the cloud to pick that up and bond those back together. So that's going to give you the cleanest, most reliable feed, is to have both. The phones running larix are okay, but you just got to make sure you have a stable connection. Otherwise, they're just going to fall apart. The big thing, though, is that HEVC or H.265 codec, because that's what will enable you to have just a really, really small footprint if you're getting out of some treacherous locations. I mean, if you're in a downtown city or something like that, you're probably going to be fine, even running up 6 megabit or something, but on larix. But once you start getting into those areas with low cell, you're gonna drop it.
Jeffrey?
So I'm going to give a different option here, and that is if you get yourself the, this is the YOLO box. They have the mini, and this is the regular YOLO box. That way, what you can do is you can actually mount this on the handlebars of the bike so you can see what's going on. You can put a Brio on this thing through the USB, or you can use an HDMI camera and get higher quality. Bringing it in here, it's got a SIM card option, so you can do a single SIM card. It's got SD options, so you can record it, but it does do program out, so you can send it to something like a live view backpack you could be wearing while you're biking. That way you can send it out live to where it is, because it does do RTMP to a source if you have that set up. So that way, once again, the person riding the bike can see what's going on as well. So if there's any problems, then they can stop or slow down or anything like that.
And Alex?
The real challenge you're going to have with any of these, if it's remotely popular, is the number of the density in the cell towers. So we've had a lot of problems with parades in the past, and parades, marathons, et cetera. Oftentimes the cell towers are going to get oversaturated, and at that point, it doesn't really matter. Any cellular solution isn't going to work. It doesn't matter how many modems you have if all the modems are saturated. So we've had a lot of problems. We've had live views with extenders. So we've got 14 modems trying to get out of a dense area and still had breakup. So you want to be careful. Just know that if you're going to go down a cellular path. Now, what we've done in the past to solve that is a much more complicated solution. So again, in budget, you may have to say, we're going to use cellular, a lot of the options that were already talked about, but you have to talk to your client and let them know if there's too many people, you may lose it. The way you build this, the way they build it for when you see a broadcast of the Boston Marathon, they build a mesh network of receivers. So if you think about your route, they're putting points all along here that can basically hand off literally there is an entire mesh network that basically all of those are typically private. You know, the companies that come in to do that, like 3G is one of the companies that does it for a lot of these types of things, and we've worked with them at Indy car racing, where they build a mesh network across the entire thing and make that possible. So those are the kind of things. And yes, it is a huge operation for doing it for something like a marathon because it's so much coverage. But that's what they do to make a lot of this stuff work, because it's just simply, and it takes days, sometimes weeks in some cases, to get it all worked out just right, to make that actually work. But rarely do we work on cellular unless there's just not a lot of people. So sometimes you'll get into an area that's outside of the area that very many people are going to be in. You might be able to get away with cellular there. We do use, what's interesting is we still use Teradeks. Oftentimes we use Teradek, just the Teradek cubes, to convert it to IP. It's a great SDI IP. It's really small. It's battery operated. But then that's handed off usually to a much more powerful transmitter that's going to get out to all the, those things. And so those are things to think about. I have used on smaller races a Teradek with a GoPro into a MiFi. So, so GoPro goes into the Teradek, gets converted, goes into the two of them attached to the MiFi, and it was in a not dense area. It was outside in the woods or whatever, but woods that had good coverage. Worked great.
And I see that Guy also put a link to an interesting video on TikTok of a Jetson backpack. Guy, did you want to talk about that for a second?
Yeah, I was fascinated with this one. A friend that's a real estate guy sent me this, and I was kind of shocked because it's a super low-cost way of building a bonded solution. I haven't tested the software, so basically it bonds it in on a server, which most likely would be running in the cloud. So that is the part that kind of worries me because it's like freeware, but the rest of the stuff is off the shelf. And he did find some really low cost, unlimited data providers. I had a question yesterday in Sunday's show about who's a low cost one. And he actually found one that I want to buy and test because it's only like $50 a month. And I was paying $130 with unlimited IRL. So the one that I linked to on the TikTok is in the chat, and it looks like an interesting build, but Jetson Nanos are kind of hard to find. They're like $300. They used to be before the pandemic really made Raspberry Pis hard to find. They were a lot cheaper, but yeah, basically that link is a Raspberry Pi taking multiple cellular modems and then bonding it up in the cloud with software. But it looks like a really interesting one. And the guy is doing events and showing that it works. So $650, that's way cheaper than a Live View Solo and it's H.265.
Thanks for that. Jeffrey's got, Jeffrey, I'm trying to see, what is that you're...
This is the Jetson Nano.
Okay. Awesome. There we go. So, Chris, you'll have to come back and let us know what solution you decide to do. And maybe that could even be a second hour. Just saying. Next question.
Miguel Lopez Waterman in Brevard, North Carolina says, do they make or have they ever made medium and large format digital still cameras?
Jason?
Absolutely. Fujifilm GFX 100 comes to mind. Hasselblad has done a fair number of them. The X1D, the 907X, the Leica S series, the S, and then the S3, and then Pentax 745Z. So yeah, fair number.
And Courtney?
Yeah, that's right. If you have deep pockets, the Hasselblad H6D 100C, and I also found one if you just want to have a 4x5 camera. There's this company called Large Sense. They have an LS45 full-size 4x5 large format digital back you can put on your 4x5 camera. So it's kind of a DIY version if you have an investment in 4x5 and good lenses.
Thank you, Bill.
Yeah, Courtney just covered what I was going to say. You can get a 4x5 camera in digital format, or you can get a back that goes on where the film magazine used to be that turns an analog camera into a digital camera. So a lot of options.
Go ahead, Guy.
Yeah, I was fascinated by some at the Fujidon booth at NAB a couple of years back. I got to play with the G100 effects, and there was like a $10,000 body with a lens. You're now talking another $3,000. So, and you need a couple of them. So you'd be looking in over $15,000 to have a nice solution. But yeah, like Jason covered, I'm shocked at Jason's knowledge of photography. You astound me, Jason. I didn't know you had that in you. Yeah, I used to be really big into photography. So when I started my career, I was scanning a lot of 4x5 and a lot of 120 film. And so to see the quality of medium formats, it's mind-blowing when somebody has good glass with a good system. There is so much detail in the medium format and large format images.
And Alex.
And only one to add is the Phase 1, which is something we've used in the past or in the distant past. I haven't used it recently, but great camera.
Next question.
Paul Looker's right back with a video streaming CDNs who has the most pleasing to the eye compression.
Go ahead, Bill.
Well, a lot of them do what Vimeo does. I tend to use Vimeo as my CDN because of a couple of things. One of them is if you send them a high-resolution video, they are going to do the scaling and recompression for sending it out at other than full res. And their compression algorithms seem to be very good at that, which means that the viewer who is looking at your video can decide, do I want the original resolution or am I looking for something that I can post to the web or something like that? That's why we use it for most of our regular commercial works as the distribution content environment up there. Also, on their website, Vimeo has a lot of tools that make it really easy to manage it up there. I know a lot of people, and I do the same thing, who use it as their website interface. They store their videos in Vimeo or Vimeo Pro account, and then they allow everybody to link to their websites to that repository of footage, and they've built a good, robust system for doing that. There are other good ones, but that's the one I use.
And Alex?
Yeah, and one thing we want to separate is streaming video versus putting up VOD. So Vimeo, I think, as a public delivery, produces probably the best kind of easy turnkey way to upload your files and have a really high quality version. When you want to get into something that might be a little bit more like you want to have all the control over that and all the control there, you might want to look at a CacheFly. You can upload stuff there, and that will handle all of that. We've used them for podcasts forever, but you can use them. And they also have streaming, which we're going to bring them on and have them talk about it because I didn't know. So anyway, I was talking to Matt about something. Matt's the founder, and he came up with streaming, and I was like, it's a whole new service that I hadn't seen. So CacheFly is something else to look at there. when you really want to talk about the highest quality streaming, in my opinion, right now is YouTube as a public CDN. If you really want the highest quality, you'll use something like AWS or Akamai. And in those areas, they're not compressing for you. So when I want to send something up to Akamai, I'm going to send 6, 8, 10 different compressions from my encoders that I hand build, that I go, this is exactly the way this footage will look the best online when someone turns it on. And so when you look at the really high quality, like Apple events and so on and so forth, they're using Akamai and they're doing something on their end to compress each one of those ladders exactly the way they want it to look at that level. And that's how you're going to get the highest quality. But it also is a very expensive version of what you can get for relatively little on YouTube. And
Jesse.
Yeah, and the video codec itself plays a part in this as well. And there also is some subjectivity, of course, but people seem to say that the AV1 codec is sort of the top tier, but there are challenges in getting that implemented on a large scale. And then VP9 and H.264 would follow that as far as the actual video encoding.
And Alex?
No. Jesse hit it.
Okay. Next question.
Mitchell Hill, Wilmington, Delaware, here on the panel. Alex, did you make a group ILM picture shown? Did you make the group ILM picture shown on Light and Magic?
Alex?
I don't know which one there's a couple of them that are on the show, so I'm not sure which one you're talking about. There is a group one that I'm in, but I don't know if that one was in the show. So there was an early one I saw in the first couple episodes. There was one from the early days. I definitely didn't make it into that one.
Go ahead, Mitchell.
I binged it over the weekend. It was a fascinating show to watch.
It is.
The segment, I think
good.
it was when James Morris was talking, when he was he's a former alumni at one of the schools I went to. Yeah. And he was talking about how they had to man up for, excuse me, the turn of phrase, get all these employees to handle the digital transition. And they started like with 100 people, and then it was like 500 people, and then it was like 1,000. I know you had to be in there somewhere else.
I might have been. There's a picture they took when the digital team was about 1,200, and so that might be if that one's in there. I'm some speck, I'm some little cog in the giant machine that was there. But I will say, every time it comes up, one of the best documentaries made. I mean, just not just don't just watch it for the content, but watch it for the incredible quality of the interviews. I mean, just the visual quality, the lighting, the backgrounds, the settings, the animations. They have things that look like they're hand drawn. There was one part where they were showing this camera going around, and I noticed it looked like it's drawn, but the cables are wiggling in 3D, and I was just like, oh, those guys. It was just off the charts as far as like how to build a documentary as well. Just the craftsmanship is amazing.
And Mitchell.
It was also interesting to see the genesis of Avid, starting out as Editoroid, and you saw that transition into the digital world and how it affected a lot of people. There were some backstories that they were talking about a model maker and how he was in question about his job when Spielberg came in and saw their rendition of Jurassic Park, creating the first CG, really believable dinosaur. It was just awesome.
And Jesse has put a link in the chat for us. Thank you so much, Jesse, for us all to go and check it out. Next question.
Next one comes to us from John Foltz in Selinsgrove, Pennsylvania. And he says, for Guy specifically, can any Xbox controller be used with NDI Monitor on Windows, or does it need to be a fancy one?
Go ahead, Guy.
Define fancy. This one's $45, and it's just a Turtle Beach Xbox One controller. I'm not sure if the 360, the former models work. I think that they will. The one that I have here, you can see it's just a USB-C connection, and you do want it hardwired. But yeah, it's $45, and you can see that as I move. Actually, is it hooked up? I got to be in this other window. And you can see that I can go left, I can go right, I can go down, I can go up, and then I can zoom in, which, is pretty cool. If you get a kid who's operating your camera, that's really good at this. They can get some nice shots just with a $45 controller. So yeah, that's it. Turtle Beach Recon is the name.
Very nice. Jesse?
Yeah, another solution that I've used for a long time has been this little application called RocoSoft. And what you can do is use any gaming USB or serial joystick, and that will interface with your camera. So if you don't have the big bucks to put it out there for the proprietary camera controllers, you can use this sort of in-between app and use little $50 affordable joysticks. So I'll put that in the chat.
Next question.
Next one comes to us from Chris Widener at Lafayette, Indiana. And Chris says, I was asked if I could live stream a Telegram group. Their facts, frequent asked questions, make it sound possible. Anyone done this? And if so, any gotchas?
Go ahead, Jason.
You know, I'm trying to remember if I've done a Telegram group. I think I've done Threema in the past. My advice is, as long as you have your own dedicated broadcast machine or encoder, it shouldn't be a big deal. In the past, I think I've used a web presenter and an SDI switcher, and after that, no issue.
Jeffrey?
Restream does Telegram. You can bring it through RTMP. I think StreamYard does too, but I don't know. But I know Restream does.
And Alex?
I took mine down because Jeffrey hit it. Restream is the way to go for Telegram.
Copy that. Thank you. Next question.
Tony Mobley in Noonan, Georgia. Liberty, is Canva still a good resource for graphics for streaming media?
I will let Jeffrey go ahead.
Absolutely. I don't use it for my channel, but I'm working with another channel that is using it not only for creating thumbnails for their YouTube channel, but also bringing in graphics and little bar charts and things like that into their shows. So it's a great resource if you don't have something like Photoshop.
Agreed. So yes, it's still a great tool to use, and especially because the barrier to entry is you can drag and drop, as opposed to the learning curve of a Photoshop or any of those other tools out there. And then also just the fact that it's in the cloud. So if you're on one site and you have someone else elsewhere, and you can either both communicate. There have been shows where we've had to quickly switch out graphics, and just being able to have someone a central folder where everybody's pulling assets from and being able to make changes on the fly. It's definitely a great resource, and they have so many templates. That's the huge thing. They got a big infusion of cash last year as well, so they are continuing to add stock photos and just a lot of the resources that you would need from various other sites. You can get most of that all in one place, so it's still a great platform. Next question.
Tony Mobley, Noonan, Georgia. Can Guy share more information about the NDI free training?
Go ahead, Guy.
Yeah, there's a few modules inside of the New Tech University. So they call it New Tech U. I'll put a link in the chat. And the ones that are free are the NDI 5 new releases like Bridge and what are some of the other ones? There's a couple modules. Remote. So there's a couple modules that are actually in the paid classes. So the one that I just wrapped up over the weekend, which was a ton, it was 8 hours. That one's $600 for that course. And that's the New Tech performance networking, high performance networking course. So that one's like a fire hose. I mean, it's a ton of information, but the free stuff, when I went over there, I was like, wait a second, a bunch of this free stuff is what I just took. So if you go into the link, you'll see the link to not the ones that say like speed, like learn how to be a 3-play operator, or any of that, which there are some free stuff for those as well. But I wouldn't, if you're not going to use any of that hardware, the TriCast or any of that, then I would just concentrate on the NDI 5 module specifically. But yeah, it's completely free, and it's really good. It's enlightening. Some of the stuff, like I didn't know, I showed it on Saturday that you can use the keys to control PTZ cameras. Was like, what? Because it doesn't work on the Mac, unfortunately. That's probably why I didn't know. But I tried it on the PC after taking the class, and I was like, oh my gosh, that would have been so helpful so many times to be able to set presets and store them with a keyboard and then recall them just with a key. So really cool stuff, but I'll put that link and you can take that class. Highly recommend it.
Thank you. Next question.
Jasmine Lee in Singapore says, what is the term to search for if I'm looking for a designer of presentations for corporate keynote sessions? Unfortunately, the brief is for extremely tight turnaround, as the content needs to be updated, to be as updated as possible.
Go ahead, Jesse.
Yeah, I think just a general graphic designer could do that. I mean, I used graphic designers in the past and have a a good name that I can send you of a really awesome person, but just somebody that can really get a feel for what the culture of a business is and what their mission statement is. But most folks can do, keynote design if they're a well-versed graphic designer.
And Bill?
I would specify Keynote. If you have a tight turnaround like that, I wouldn't work with a general designer who's going to then you're going to try to find somebody to adapt their designs into Keynote. I'd look for a Keynote designer. If you want somebody a higher level up, you might consider art director - Keynote. That'll get you the next tier up of people as opposed to just a designer. Those are my thoughts.
And Alex?
Yeah, there's tiers of what you want to do. One thing is Keynotopia has got incredible templates that you can download, and that can, if you're going to try to do it yourself or hire someone local designer, and you just want to give them a head start, going through a bunch of those might help you on it's $100 for a bunch of templates. Fiverr has actually people on it that will do designs for not very much money. So you can get them. It depends on how secure your presentations need to be and what kind of information you're covering. When you get into secure, you kind of have to do it in-house. And so that's why the templates start to make a difference. Then you can, on the far end of what a large number of people in Silicon Valley use is Duarte. Duarte is Duarte. They're the big game. They're the big guns, and that's going to cost as much as some conferences that I've worked on to have them do your keynote. But if you're doing it for a big presentation, that's the far end of that scale. While searching, you can just search for presentation designer. I did come up with one that, while searching for your answer, that looked really good, is Code, KOAD. This is a person who does design out of LA, and his stuff looks really nice. I will say that I would disagree a little bit with Jesse in the sense that some designers can design stuff, but information graphics is its own little world that I would say is a more difficult thing than just design and white space and things. Information graphics that we need to put in, usually we need people who have a lot of experience in that one specific thing to get the kind of the slides we're expecting.
And just to add to that, yes, the sensitivity to the information and possibly looking up Upwork is also another site, and just corporate presentation and what Bill said about specifically identifying Keynote, because you said you have such a tight turnaround. So then that way you can just kind of, the cream of the crop will raise, and we'll talk about searching in LinkedIn. So stay tuned for that in the second hour. Next question.
Matt Wood in Newcastle upon Tyne says, do the panelists have any opinions or advice on the best platform or platforms to host an online course?
John Wallace, sorry.
That's okay. Cornerstone is the software solution that we use as an LMS. There's also several different free ones. You can also leverage other platforms like Udemy to host a course. I would definitely recommend Cornerstone. It's been a great platform for us. We're using it for about 30,000 people, so it's been really stable for us.
And I would say, just depending on if you're talking from the education standpoint, like in school, but publicly, there are a lot of online coaches who will use we use Samcart building out, because last year they just added a courses platform. So while you pay for the membership, the courses platform right now is free. So you might want to try that out. I know that they do have a trial. Teachable is also another one, Kajabi, and all of these are, if you are also looking for people to pay. And so you'll have a great landing page, and it'll take them right into that course funnel. So those are a couple of them. And when you Google those, you'll also see ads surrounding the other platforms that are out there to use. John Preto?
Lightspeedvt.com. Those are friends of mine here local in Las Vegas.
Next question.
Liberty White says, Bill, can you share the changes that you and TJ discussed about your setup? I assume you're talking about lighting?
Yes, it was. You were discussing that yesterday, and since that's not recorded, I thought it would be great for our community to hear it again.
Absolutely. My big change was reaching forward on my desk and taking this switch, which is usually on, and turning it off. And everybody seemed to like that. Now, once I did that, the comment was made that the two lights that are on the far side, not that light, this light and this light are now a little bit too skewed blue. So I'm going to go in and I'm going to add another CTO gel or a half CTO to those outsides. So everybody was kind of having fun playing with my lighting, and I enjoyed that immensely.
It looks great. Next question.
Next one comes to us from Michael in Munich, and he says, hi, my wife wants to take short videos of small art objects she built in 3D for step-by-step instructions. These items need to be placed on a table. What are good and not the best lights that you would recommend, and where would you place them? And KR Michael, it says here at the end.
Go ahead, Courtney.
Well, there are little stages that you can get on eBay and Amazon that are designed for photographing jewelry and things like that are for people that place a lot of stuff on eBay. So you could look into that. They're little pop-up lighting devices that have panels on either side, and you just put lights to them, and they put a nice soft light surrounding everything. The other way is just to get you some small lights like this. This is a little Vivitar light that came with my camera. I don't know if I can get it to come on. Anyway. It can be put on the end of a magic arm and positioned to give you a directional light for very small objects. So you can move it around, and it creates a nice, quite bright light for not too much money. I think these are just, $10 or $15.
And Alex?
Yeah, the advantage of the little boxes is that they usually diffuse all the lights so that you don't have any directional lighting coming in. And a lot of them will have a turntable, a motorized turntable on the inside of them that you can then take pictures of it as it goes around as well. So the little box with a turntable, you can get a great set of photos for and you can also use that for photogrammetry if you're interested.
Next question.
Chris Widener in Lafayette, Indiana says, was running off Starlink for a few events over the weekend, and it seemed very stable with a large buffer. Is there a way in YouTube to control the buffer size at that end for use with hardware encoders?
Go ahead, John Wallace.
Yeah, I don't believe there's any way on the YouTube side. The buffer is really on your side to control how much data you're sending and what YouTube should expect for the playback rate to be. So they're going to hold a little bit on their side. There are settings within OBS that allow you to, if you want the quickest settings, so that they're going to put the least amount of processing on, make sure that's off in whatever encoder that you're using, if that's an option. But typically YouTube already has a larger buffer size, and then making sure that you're just taking advantage of it on your side when you're sending it out. Definitely really important for remote streams.
And Alex.
Yeah, there's no way to do it inside of YouTube. It's just what it is to get to YouTube. I mean, you can have buffers on your encoders. It won't matter. YouTube's going to take it as fast as you're going to send it. And it will theoretically break up if it doesn't get what it needs. What you're really looking for in this kind of environment is Zixi. Now, SRT is 80% of Zixi. But I just got an email from someone using the Elemental Link, which uses Zixi in a very challenging environment, and it worked perfectly. And that's what it's designed for. The easiest way to get Zixi, you can roll your own, you can wrap it yourself in a PC that goes into the cloud, or you can actually use an Elemental Link, which is about $1,000, and then something per minute to do it. But what that does is it now uses Zixi to get to the cloud. That's going to handle that unstable transmission. You can then send it from there to YouTube, and getting something in between that's going to make that work is going to make a big difference.
Next question.
Jens Olson, back from Sandpoint, Idaho. Has anyone built their own microphones? I just saw the DIY do-it-yourself Perks video building one. Looks super interesting. Next after-hours build project, perhaps? And there's a link there.
Go ahead, Mitchell.
These have been popping up lately, mostly modifying SM58s to be something else. And I think it's a curiosity, but I wouldn't recommend it. I don't think it's practical, and I don't think you're going to equal the quality of the mic you're trying to build up. It's just a fun video, but I don't take it too seriously.
Go ahead, Jeffrey.
I totally disagree. I mean, I built my first microphone in high school, and mostly we've been rebuilding microphones, especially with drums, because an SM57 is pretty long, but you can make a snub nose SM57, so you can bring it in. Plus, if for some reason your SMs do break, you can take them apart, put them back together, and run from there. Ribbon microphones are probably the most fun, but you definitely need to have your soldering skills in check when you're doing something like that, because you can mess up really quick.
And Alex.
The moment we have 15 people who want to do that lab, I'm in. That's all I got to say. Okay.
Next question.
Michael in Munich, Germany says, doing first baby steps with Dante Via to connect to computers. I have issues if the wide area local area network is on. I need it for universal control. How do you tell Dante to ignore the WLAN connections and use the 2 Ethernet connections only?
Jesse?
Yeah, the simplest way would be just to use a separate NIC for Dante only, and basically separating any Dante devices onto its own network. And if you're using a switch, you can do that with a VLAN. You could also go the route of setting up separating those on your firewall levels and setting up certain rules on your firewall to block things going on to your Dante network. That's another way.
Next question.
Kenneth Jones in Seattle, Washington. Can the panel suggest a mixer similar to the Flow 8 but with motorized faders? Remote display must reflect the physical reality. Any ideas?
Go ahead, Alex.
The X32. It's similar to a Flow 8. It's a lot bigger. I actually don't know anything that's that small that uses a lot of motorized faders. You're going to end up with a motorized controller. Icon makes one. There used to be a Behringer, I think it was like a BSC 2000 or something that does it as well, and that's a controller. But an actual mixer at $300 with motorized faders, I don't think so.
Jeffrey.
The closest thing I can think of is Behringer's iPad version, where you put the iPad on top of the mixer, and then another iPad can control it. And
but you still have motorized faders. But
you just don't have motorized. Yeah, it'd be digital, absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's the only other thing I could think of there for that price.
Next question.
John Foltz, back from Seelings Grove, Pennsylvania. Can anyone recommend a contract 3D printing service? I have a few fiddly bits to print, but I'm not quite ready for a printer yet.
Go ahead, Courtney.
Well, it depends. If the parts you need to print are plastic, you might be better just buying an entry-level printer like a Creality or you can get a Creality 3D for $279. I think they're about $279, and that's a pretty good starter printer. The thing you can send it off to a contract company like Shapeways. Shapeways will take your STL files and deliver a print, but you have to consider your turnaround time. And if you need metal parts, of course, go with Shapeways, because metal printing is quite expensive and very difficult to do, and the printers are highly expensive. But if you're just printing plastic parts, the iteration process is really what's going to kill you if you're using a service to print out the parts. Because if you're designing something and you're printing it out, you get it back from the service and it's just a hair too small, or gee, wouldn't it be better if it were a little bit taller, or wouldn't it work a lot better if it had a little fin over here on the side? And so you make that change and you send it off to the service, and 2 days later you get a printout back. It gets very expensive and very time-consuming just in the iteration process. And for $300, you can get started in 3D printing, and I think you'll find that you can become pretty competent at it in just a few days.
Go ahead, Alex.
Yeah, Shapeways and Proto Labs are two really good services if you're going to send it out. Those are probably the best two that you could probably send it to. But I agree with Courtney, buy your own printer. I mean, $300, $500, whatever it is, you're not going to, it's the power of 3D printing is iteration.
And Jeffrey.
There are some places that are popping up 3D print labs where you can actually walk in and you can learn a little bit more, not have the 3D printer and do the tests. There's also some user groups. You find the local user groups and then find somebody that's willing, where you pay them $50, $100 to print out a couple things, and then you're going to get it right away instead of waiting in the mail and waiting for a big queue.
Next question.
TJ Asher in Minneapolis says, is Bill planning to continue his Final Cut Pro teaching at noon Pacific time, 1700 UTC on Fridays? I, for one, have been learning a lot, and thank Bill for sharing his knowledge. Well, you're welcome. I planned on it unless somebody tells me not to do it. And I want to make sure that you understand what I'm doing here. I'm not teaching you to be an editor. I'm not teaching you to be a Final Cut editor. I am looking through the program because Final Cut Apple loves this idea of progressive disclosure, which means that the program looks simple and can be used simply, but there is a tremendous amount of depth behind it. So for me, the way I learn best is to understand all of the, or at least a good chunk of what the program can do. Then if I know it can do something, I can go learn how to actually affect that myself. So we're doing an overview of all the kind of internal modules of Final Cut, which I think is a great place for most learners to start with it, but I'm not trying to teach you how to be an editor, just so you're clear about that.
Yeah, just understanding the science behind it all. Next question.
Josh Kaufman in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania says, getting glare in the top quarter of my picture from my camera if I have anything bright on the top third of my teleprompter. Is there a workaround to use brighter or lighter color elements, or is this a limit of what can be displayed without interference?
Go ahead, Courtney.
Well, you just have to change your setup a little bit. It can be one of a couple of different things. It can be light flaring into the lens from the teleprompter monitor itself, in which case you want to get you a little clip-on or screw-on lens shade that goes in the front of your lens that will make sure that the front element of the lens isn't seeing any light from the monitor itself. So the lens shade is back far enough and sticks out far enough so it puts the front element of the lens back enough and it blocks the light from the monitor. The other possibility is on some cheaper teleprompters, when they cut the glass, the top edge of the glass is reflective and it forms a little tiny mirror that's 1/8 of an inch thick. And if light hits the top edge of that glass, it can reflect down, it can refract down and light up, illuminate the top half of your frame and can cause little tweaks and flares into the lens. So in that case, I take a little piece of black electrical tape and line the top edge of your glass with that electrical tape to make sure that light isn't hitting it and refracting into your lens.
Next question.
Next one comes from Mitchell Hill, Wilmington, Delaware. Auto iris or not to auto iris, when does it make sense?
Go ahead, Mitchell.
I just bumped into this the other day, and we were kicking it around on after hours last night. And I guess the problem is like, well, when should I have it on? When should I have it off? And if you're walking between a light and a dark place, you might want to have it on, particularly if you're following somebody into a sunny area from a dark room. But you also run into problems if you're doing an interview and somebody walks into the shot that has a light-colored shirt on, and then you get a little issue there. The problem also is that you get an issue with the depth of field, because as the iris changes, the depth of field changes. So there's all these things that are going on. It could be a problem. Nowadays, a variable ND seems to work pretty well instead of that.
And Alex?
I almost never, ever use auto iris. Like it is when it doesn't work, it immediately tells people you're an amateur. Like it just so you know, like as soon as it happens, professionals will look at it and just go amateur, like it because they're all controlling it and they have some, they do it by hand or they do it whatever. But I'd much rather have something be bright and slowly fix it, just quietly fix that before I would ever use auto iris for a professional product.
Go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, it's circumstantial for me. I seldom, I would say maybe you used it on 2 shoots on the last 100 that I've done. And that's only when I'm doing exactly what you described. I'm interior following somebody and I follow them outside. If I know my camera well enough and understand that it will react quick enough so I don't have to sit there and gradient post-process that change to make everything pretty similar, I may use it in that circumstance. But most of the time I turn it off because I'd rather just change the whole shot afterwards as opposed to changing it over those painstaking gradations.
And Courtney?
Some people get confused with auto iris and auto ISO. Auto iris actually changes the diameter of the iris on the lens itself. But most digital cameras these days use auto ISO. They don't actually change the diameter of the iris. They will change the gain of the amplifiers that are amplifying those physical light sensors. So if you get into a low light situation, the auto gain will bring up the gain. And of course, when it brings up the gain, it brings up the noise. So that's bad for any kind of transmission stuff. So you want to have that turned off and set at a fixed ISO so that it's not varying the gain and increasing your noise when you get into a less lighted situation.
Next question.
Sarah Doyle's in Falls Church, Virginia. Doyle says, any recommendations for delayed streaming, hardware or cloud, with redaction capabilities?
Alex?
As a note, video delay is very computationally intensive because it takes a lot to store the video. So it depends on what resolution, but the one that we've used in the past has been two different versions of the Evertz. Evertz makes a video delay unit as well as what they call a Pro Guard, which will do up to 30 seconds of UHD. So it is, but I don't know what the Pro Guard costs. I can tell you that the video delay for 720 1080i is $11,000 because I paid for it. So anyway, so they're very hard to get cost-effective versions of video delay.
And Jeffrey?
I was tripping a little bit on the redaction, hopefully. But what I did about a month ago, somebody asked this question. And so what I did was I actually took two machines, and you can do this with even OBS, and just basically have an ear in both, and then have that delay on the second machine. And then when you need to take out something, video or audio, you could actually do the switch there and then send that out that way. That's probably the cheapest and easiest way to do it.
Next question.
Next one comes to us from Tony Mobley in Noonan, Georgia. As school is back in some locations around the country, is presentation, keynote specifically, training on Saturday coming back, or is that going to the second hour?
Alex?
We could look at doing keynote in the second hour of Saturdays, or make it one of the things we talk about. We could go back to not just having 2 hours on Saturday. I will tell you that the reason that I really got my Saturdays back is we turned a bunch of stuff off, and I'm somewhat resistant to personally managing more events on Saturday or Sunday at the moment. So that's kind of where we're at. So it has to sit, for me, it has to sit inside that 2 hour window. But if we do some more educational driven stuff for that second hour, and we keep it to that second hour, I'm definitely open to doing that.
Next question.
Morgan Price in Victoria, British Columbia in Canada says, can you control Apple Keynote with a Stream Deck and or companion to jump around a slide deck to specific sections so that you can use it for a Q&A type presentation?
Go ahead, Jason.
Absolutely. Go in, create a multi-set hotkey, and program it for Control-Command-G, and then enter the slide number. Title a button how you want that slide to appear, and then you have a grid that you can just hop around.
And Alex?
I highly recommend having a switcher with this because it's just really, you tend to get bad keys and you tend to want to see what you did before you jump to it. So having a computer with or your second monitor going in to a switcher so that you can hit it and then see it and then cut to it really makes a big difference.
Good tip there. Next question.
Ryan Poirier in Orlando, Florida says, hybrid Zoom event. What's a cost-efficient option for local recordings? One, a video cam hosted laptop, one computer scan converted laptop, in case the hotel network fails, as a backup to Zoom cloud recording.
Go ahead, Jesse.
The cost-efficient one is the one that doesn't get you fired for missing the recording. So that would probably be something that comes right out of the camera and has nothing to do with Zoom or networks or anything like that. That's like a hardware recorder, maybe like a HyperDeck or AJA, something like that, where you can, if it's a one camera setup, you could just split that single camera right into a recorder. You also have, it looks like a scan converted NDI signal. So you could have a separate computer that just uses like Studio Monitor, NDI Studio Monitor to record that separate, slideshow video file there. And then you can also have even a separate machine that just does your Zoom local record, knowing that you would want to have that full screen and just locked into speaker view if that's what you're trying to capture.
Go ahead, Alex.
I'm not going to say the one I was going to say because Courtney's coming next because I was going to suggest his idea. But I will say that another one to look at is the ATEM ISO because remember that you can have those going into the ATEM and you hit record. It's going to record the ISO, the program of whatever you're cutting. It's a pretty good solution.
And Courtney.
Well, I guess I'll recommend the one he suggests. Either the Video Assist from Blackmagic, which is a nice recorder. It will record in ProRes. It'll record in H.264.
Tell them about the H.264. Tell them about the little box.
Okay. Then there's ClearClick, which is you can find them on Amazon for about $89. You plug it in HDMI in. You hit one button. It records H.264. Into a thumb drive. So that's the cheapest solution I can think of. And it delivers a pretty decent recording. I've used it for posting stuff on YouTube all the time.
Thanks. Next question.
Douglas Carmichael's up next. He says, in this classic Concorde documentary, and he's got the link there, Captain Hutchinson asked for a specific VOR to be set up on the Concorde's INS. Should we have structured processes for other production tasks rather than simply starting the show and or stream?
Alex?
There's actually a fair amount of structure, in these shows to do what we do every day here. It may feel informal, but you have, we start and you just see it over a very long period of time. You have people asking, people are getting mic checked, people are coming in and talking, people are, reminding people to ask questions. People are, those are the kind of things that are all kind of building up to the show. So while it feels informal, there's an enormous number of things that happen. Both what you see and what you don't see before the show starts.
Next question.
Douglas Carmichael right back with, when I was at a local festival, I heard a subtle sound of the front of house console, DSP, and amp rack fans spinning up as the lights dimmed and the headline act started. Could this be because of the higher sound pressure levels or because the electronics were doing more work?
Go ahead, Alex.
Theoretically, it could be the that it's pushing more, the amplifiers are pushing more, but it might also be coincidence. Like it just happened to turn on when you saw it together.
And Bill?
It might also be because they had a mic back at the amp racks that they were using to give directions to people in the room, and they forgot to turn it off. And when they kicked up all those fans, it was mic'd.
Next question.
Douglas Carmichael says a NASA document mentions the launch pad / test stand sound suppression water system also being used, quote, as a coolant along with suppressing vibration. Why could that be? Is it that the same principle used in water-cooled PCs, for example?
Go ahead, Courtney.
Yes, because water is cooler than flaming hydrogen. So
really?
The reason they use it for sound suppression is it absorbs a lot of vibration, and the water spray absorbs a lot of the sound. But it also cools down all the metal of the launch stand, which can heat up. And it's like like a radiator, water cool, so that if that launch stand, if the steel on that launch stand heats up too hot, it can ignite other things like any cables that might be running up and down them, things like that, camera cases, So it's used for that. And it's the same principle in water-cooled PCs, except it sprays open water to absorb the sound, not contained water, which is used in PCs for cooling, where that's a self-contained radiator system. And
Alex.
Yeah, because we have an extra minute, so by the way, I just want to back up and say there's a lot of questions today. We had a lot of questions submitted by the producers. I did an experiment today, which we may try again until everyone gets tired of it. But I told everybody in Discord, like, hey, this would be a good time to ask a question. And we definitely got more questions. Anyway, but also really well done by the panel. But people just cruised through it where we had complete answers, but we spent a little less time wandering around. And so I think that it was a good hour. To go back to the water, to be very specific, it's, as Courtney said, it's an open system where it's just going into the water, as opposed to your cooling system in your PC is trying to keep the water all in one place. So it goes down to the chip, warms up, comes back out. One little note that I thought was common, but someone pointed out that they'd never seen it before. If you pour, and some of us here will go, it seems obvious, but water, one of the great things about water is surface area. That's why it's really good for chips. That's why it's good there. If you pour a gallon of water into your cooler you fill it with ice and then you put everything in, everything cools up a lot faster because you've massively increased the surface area of the cold against the cans. when I was in college and in better shape, two of us would put all the stuff into the cooler, and two of us would get on either side of it and swing it like this for until we couldn't lift our arms, and it would make everything ice cold in about 2 minutes. So anyway, just it's like shaker for a martini, except with a giant cooler and lineman. So anyway, I just want to. I'm filling time because we actually got to the end after 32 questions. Go ahead, Liberty.
Yeah, I'm just going to pull in this comment from Chris. Chris Widener says, engineers love doing more work with less, and sound propagation in water is very different from atmosphere. Water-cooled PCs aren't the best solution for less noise. For that, you need remote cooling. So thank you for that, Chris. And we're going to head into we're at the top of the second hour, and we're going to get into LinkedIn. This is the part 2 to LinkedIn marketing. If you missed the last one, don't worry. It's on YouTube. Go to officehours.global and you can see that episode. Today, I wanted to take some time to explore groups and how you can use groups and not only for your job search, but also from a lead generation standpoint as well. And if you are looking to build community, creating groups using LinkedIn. Also want to go back to search and dig into that a little bit more, kind of to Jasmine's question earlier. When you're searching for someone that you want to hire, some of the keywords that you can use, and how to use Boolean, there we go, Boolean search to help you with that. And then finally, just going over some pages and accounts that do really well, because LinkedIn is really powerful, especially for our community, from the job searching, but then also the prospecting, and then overall just brand. So I'm going to share my screen here so that we can just pull up this LinkedIn. Here we go. Alrighty, awesome. So just going back to, so this is just, if I log into LinkedIn, this is what I see here. And if you are looking for like groups, I would just scroll down here. So I've already joined a number of groups. So I'm going to go over here to Women in Streaming Media. And one of the ways, and it shows you here, if you are just some of the details, who some of the people are. If I want to invite people to a group, that I can do that as well, because there may be people that you just have a great idea that this group would be good for them as you're doing your relationship building. But just overall, groups, it's similar to if you're in a Facebook group. It's the idea now is that you're on LinkedIn and just having conversations, liking the same thing there as well. Now, if you want to create a group, here are some of the benefits to if you create a group is that LinkedIn is the business platform. So if you know that you've got an agency and you're trying to brand yourself around social media marketing or live streaming, this is an opportunity for you to curate a community on the platform. I'm going to go into now searching. So there are some ways, and if we use the example that Jasmine shared earlier, that she was looking for someone who's doing presentations. So up here in this search bar, if I were to pull in, I'm going to use quotations, because when you use the quotations, you're basically saying it must contain these keywords. So I'm going to put keynote here. And then I'm going to add the word designer here. And I actually will also include and, because I want LinkedIn to show me anyone who has this. It could be in their title or in their name or even in their job description. Oh, sorry, I am in the group. So let me come out of groups and go back to the main page of LinkedIn. And here we go. There, keynote. Actually, let's just do all keynote designer. And once I hit that here, right under, you'll see the different options that you get a chance to filter by. So I'm going to go here and I'm going to tap on people. And voila, already right there, we've got keynote designer. Going back to Bill's commentary around that earlier of, you may want to use some words. So if you're looking for someone, looking to hire someone, and there's a specific skill set that you're looking for, it'd be wise to use the quotation marks, because you're basically saying, LinkedIn, I want you to search for this has to be in the search results. And sometimes it might not pop up. So then you're going to have to expand. But that's a great place to start. I will remove these here, and I'm going to go to or. So if we're looking for maybe keynote or graphic designer, let's say, and then if I hit that search result there, then you see now how that changes. Some of these people might have the word keynote in it. So that's just a broader search. So, and I should have put, anytime you use the or statement, the and statement, you've got to put that in capital. So I didn't just make that revision there. And then you see the changes in the people here. Now, if I specifically wanted to look at people who I may be connected to, so then that way there could be a warm introduction, I'm going to go over here and I want people who are either in my first or second connections on LinkedIn. So now the search results that I get so it looks like I don't have any keynote people in my first connections. But if I were to click here on, let's see, this person here, I can see, oh, okay, so I do have a mutual connection. And this is just a strategy for getting warm introductions. That way if you listen to the playback from the last time we spoke about LinkedIn, getting those in-mails where people are selling, it's always best if you can get an introduction to someone, because whomever's doing the introduction, it's almost like you've been vetted. So this is, if I wanted to get an introduction to this Gabriel Wilson Carter, I'm going to say, hey, I'll shoot Dan a message, an email, and say, Dan, I'm looking for the said person. Do you mind making an introduction for me? I'm going to go back out and let's do another search, and we will do, let's see, say I did not want to include, let's try videographer. I'll just actually video and then not streaming. So that way I'm looking for someone who is just straight video and they're not a streamer. I'm going to click over here to people, because again, I'm looking for people, and there's a list that I can come up with. And again, you'll see how those keywords just pop up, and you take your time, search, see who's a good fit. And this is not only just people. Let's say, for example, if I click down here, this also gives me the various options that I can search. Let's say, and I'm going to remove the not statement here. And if I just say video broadcast. And let's say I'm looking for maybe an event. I can still go through the search here, look for some events, and it gives me a list of different workshops. So for anyone who's upskilling, so if you're looking from a freelancer perspective, or you are someone who's trying to just improve your skills overall, and you want to see where those workshops or those events are happening on LinkedIn, this is a way that you can do that as well with the search. And to round this out, I wanted to just take a moment to just go through some people who I believe are doing a good job with their LinkedIn profiles, company page, and then we can dive into some of the questions. So our very own John Barker, he does a great job with his LinkedIn profile, because whenever he has a new release or he has worked on a project, what you'll see here is, this was mentioned the last time we spoke about LinkedIn. If you want to showcase your skill set without necessarily like the humble brag, that you have the featured section. Because when I go to John's page, this pops up. It's almost like almost above the line, not all the way, but I get a chance to just see some of the things that he's worked on. But he specifically, this is the way I can put my best foot forward. I'm going to put that content there on LinkedIn. For those people who are possibly looking at maybe a recruiter or manager that you are wanting to build a relationship, it's a little hack here. If I scroll down and I go show all activity, then I can quickly see this shows me the things that, John has liked, any possible articles. He hasn't written any articles, but his posts. Any posts that he has done. So this, if you remember, we was just saying in the digital landscape, by commenting on people's posts, don't do it every day, but every now and then, that's just a way for you to pop up on their radar. So by me saying, hey, you know what? I want to get to know John a little more. I want John to get to know me. I can go to his profile, click on posts, and then, go ahead and drop some insightful, not just like, hey, good job, but love that you have shared this series with our community, just going in there and sharing something thoughtful. But this just shows you the posts that John has made. And that's a way that you can just think about relationship building. The last time I also shared how some people can put, if you have a blog or maybe even your YouTube channel, and if you are trying to cross promote. So Giselle Mello, she's an investor in Toronto, and she does a great job of just sharing insightful information with her audience, but then she also lets them know, you want to read the rest of this, you click through, and then that will bring you to her blog where you can gather the rest of the information. And why I share that and just say that's important is while you are a part of this social network, ultimately you want to convert people into your newsletter or into your Discord or wherever that community where you're actually taking the time to get their information, get their email addresses so that then you can, because, LinkedIn and the social media platforms, it's not owned real estate. You are borrowing their eyeballs, and you want to take those eyeballs and bring them somewhere where you are able to really manage the audience and manage the community. So that's just one of the ways that you can do that, by sharing some of your content, kind of teasing it out and sharing some of your content on the platform, and then funneling them into a newsletter or where they can get more information about you. And to roll it out to, and this is, again, just another example of someone, Peggy is part of the Women in Streaming Media community. And what she does really well on the platform is just curating what's happening in the space and sharing articles. So if you don't feel like you are necessarily maybe a strong writer, or you're trying to share more of that, you understand what's happening in your respective industry, just sharing articles, sharing the latest news. And she's constantly, I know that when Peggy comes up in my feed, that I'm going to see something that's happening in the streaming media landscape, and just, some critical thinking and insights. And last but not least, just rolling it out to company pages. So for those of you who, whether it be you're in the startup phase and or your company could have a greater presence on LinkedIn, this is SalesLoft. And LinkedIn, as much as they've added video now for a number of years, it's highly underutilized. And SalesLoft has been one of those companies. They're a SaaS company, software as a service, and they use video. So they do a very good job in just having, creating content, their in-house content, sharing that with their audience. They do a lot of webinars as well. And as what you can see here, let's just scroll down to even just some of their posts and how they've even curated their page so that you get an idea about the company culture. What are some of the jobs that they have available? So again, just from your business perspective, just some ways that you can really showcase and highlight your services and why people want to do business with you, because ultimately you're doing all of this so that you can really focus on building a brand, giving value to your community. So that was a quick rundown there, and we'll get into it. Alex.
Yeah, just one thing with with any kind of group that you're in, whether it's a Discord group or a LinkedIn group, I really focus on how you serve that market with what you know. You don't need to overshare. So it is. You really there's some people who do that a lot, and they'll just put a lot of look at what I did, and it's fine. But it's really about how does this, like, what if I post something? I don't post a ton of stuff on LinkedIn. I do post stuff in groups sometimes, and I definitely do it in Discord. Here's something that I did. Here's what we did. Here's what was hard about that. Here's what we learned. Here's what we figured out. But the idea is that I'm going to post something that someone goes, oh, that's really cool. Or, oh, that's useful to me. And I really try, I'm not really interested in marketing. It markets myself in the sense that that people know that I did that thing, but it's really not about that. Like, it's really about sharing something that I learned, sharing something that might be useful for others, sharing something that's going to make a difference for what people are doing in production. And if I can't really think about that, I don't post it. And I get out of, I don't really worry about marketing using any group that I'm in. I just look at being a useful community member. And I find that solves all the problem. I have a long history in this. I've said this in the past. I got my job at Lucasfilm because I was on an AOL, group, answering people's questions, and working through things and having conversations with folks. And and I've gotten a lot of things out of serving communities. And so I think that but I think that the biggest mistake I see in LinkedIn is, as Liberty was talking about, the humble brags, the trying to post something of just somewhat what somebody did, the push it, and I think John Barker does a really good job of, here's some useful things that I put up. Like, he does a good job of, like, he puts stuff in that community is going to be interested in, and there's a breakdown of it. But it doesn't have all the filler in it. It just has what he does. And so just something to always keep in mind, because people see it through it a lot faster than you do when you're posting it. So you have to kind of step outside of yourself and see, how are people going to actually read this?
Yeah, and I think that you make a good point too, of even while we're using this industry term of marketing, how we use the term internally of serving. Like, if taking it from that perspective of how am I going to serve the community, serving the audience, even the example of saying, I know that Peggy, like, she's that go-to of always sharing what's in the streaming landscape. That's not her pushing herself or her product. She's coming in as, okay, I'm going to be the plug, the connector for this, for this ecosystem. And Alex, you actually helped me remember even too, of just, even when you're in the comments and bringing value in the comments, to your point, people can see through that. If you are someone who's spamming, like, you do not want to be spammy. That's the worst thing that you can do, because people will see your name and they will, they'll be turned off, and that's definitely not what you want to do. And the algorithm will also be like, oh, you've made too many comments in the last 15 minutes, hour.
And I will say, InMail is a disaster. Like, don't do that. Like, don't, like, you I know you can buy that and you can do those things and reach out to them. As someone who gets a lot of InMail, wow, do I hate it. Like, I don't even read them anymore. Like, if I see InMail on it, I just delete it. Like, no. Because I just, like, it frustrates me so much, because it's just so, and it's not that it couldn't be useful. The structure could be useful. It's that so many people have overused it that it's just in spammy ways, that I don't even want to see someone who sends me an InMail at this point. I don't, and the thing is, I don't want to hear from them again. Like, I just, like, oh, no, please. Yeah.
Right. And that goes back to the strategy aspect of, hopefully I am thinking about looking at someone who can speak to, like, sales and sales processes. But that goes back to the idea of engage with your prospect or whomever you're trying to impress. Engage with them first. Engage with their content. Show that you care. It's just like if you go for a job interview, you are not going to show up to the interview and not be able to say something of value of why you want to work at the company, or even giving them feedback on what the research that you've done on them. Same thing with LinkedIn is go ahead and make some comments or think of this as, we talk about this a lot on office hours, like the long tail game, and just not that, because that's where InMail comes in as like that instant, like I just need to reach this person, versus imagine if you took the time to engage first when that InMail, because I do think that there's value in InMail, but if you do the prep work first, so when your InMail comes in, that, oh, Liberty, like she shared, there's so many times, I don't personally use InMail that often, but I'm spending so much time in the comments that I'm getting to know people there. And then I've gotten, by commenting on people's posts, I've gotten people trying to connect with me afterwards. So just trying to rework how we think about marketing on LinkedIn so that you can be the exception and you can create a great experience for the people that you're trying to reach and or trying to get a job somewhere. Alex?
And just remember with InMail, or not InMail, but just messages in general, if you're sending them out, people only see about 10 words. So they better be good. Just remember, like, as you start, like if you start on some kind of long whatever, like don't say hi, I don't know. I mean, just really get to the point, because that person's going to look down at that list and make a decision about you pretty quickly.
Yeah, and just pulling in some of the comments. So Chris Clark says, sounds like Liberty and Alex advocate doing well by doing good, be generous and be brief. Yes, Chris, I like that part. Be generous and be brief. Then John Snyder says, InMail, buy your way into someone's inbox. And it is, LinkedIn is a platform. So they're looking at different ways to not only generate revenue, but provide access to the clients that are paying for that service. And then to round out, Dave Burke says, you can turn off InMail in your LinkedIn preferences. I think it's under privacy. At least I can as a premium account. And one more, John Snyder says, customer service equals taking the next step to add value to someone else. And that's a great way to tie a bow on that there. And we can head into the questions right now. Let's go, Bill.
Thank you, Liberty. Tony Mobley has our first one from Noonan, Georgia. Is it a good idea to post the entire Conversations with Tony Mobley schedule on LinkedIn?
Tony, I'll let you go ahead first and give us a little more context.
Yeah, I was actually thinking about just the month of August, since this is the beginning of August, and I was not talking about the entire year because we're not ready for that yet. But I was looking at possibly. August is pretty much set. And at this time, I could actually post all the dates for the conversations that are scheduled for August. I didn't know if it was a good idea, but based on the conversations that we've had, I'm thinking maybe it's not a good idea, just on the conversation we most recently had. So I'll wait for the panel's response.
Yeah, I think that it is a great idea to post it. It's a matter of how you post it. So if you were to come on and do a video and then, share the names and who's coming up, try to do that in 60 seconds or less, that's one piece of content. Then you can have some graphics maybe that has the person's name. I think that's what you use for your hero images. If those are already created, then you can post that and share a little bit more about the subject matter for that night, and or do a slide. If you do, it's with PDFs. So if you had the 4 weeks and create a PDF, then now you've got a slideshow or a carousel that shows up on your profile, and go ahead and pin that as a feature. The reason I would say it's a great idea, the reason I say it's how you do it, because with all these platforms, they will show your content to more people based on the initial first 15 minutes to an hour of how many people engage with that. So I would take some time to just look at your past posts, or if you can remember what days and times work well, make sure that you are doing it those days and times so that you can get the engagement, so that LinkedIn will continue to push it out. And remember, a minimum, when possible, of a week is favorable on the platform. Next question.
Comes from our friend Vienna in Australia, our bandmate. Vienna says, what's something that the panelists have modified on their LinkedIn profile or post that has had an unexpected effect on engagement levels, either good or bad?
Ooh, that's a good one. I would say that for myself, what works really well is video. I shared earlier is that it's highly underutilized. Also going live, and that was something we didn't experiment maybe about 2 years ago of going live. Now we saw that while it worked for our schedules to do this video podcast series at 7 a.m., that's also the time so the engagement at that time wasn't great, but we did get a lot afterwards, and it was almost like a morning ride. So while parents were getting ready, those with children were getting ready for their day, they were listening, but we didn't necessarily, our show was very driven on audience participation and comments. So that was something that we adjusted and were able to move it to a later hour. So I would say that's a combination of like what has been good and then, room for improvement. If I were to make some additional predictions about what will be good on LinkedIn is the audio. I've been seeing it pop up more and more with people, just like Twitter Spaces, just like Clubhouse. So LinkedIn has brought that feature to the platform, and StreamYard has done a phenomenal job with curating their community, and they do a live where they're live on Facebook, but then they're also live on LinkedIn. And I think I saw last night they're at like episode 186. So every Sunday night they are live at 9 p.m. EST. So those are some things that I've seen worked really well. Oh, and one more are when people share like really authentic moments. I've seen that work well. There's a fine line between that, but when you see people in management sharing, being transparent, sometimes that can really work well for demonstrating what company culture could be like. So those are my thoughts there. Thank you. Next question.
Douglas Carmichael's up next. And Douglas says, for someone with multiple skills, and in this case, he says iOS development and audio and or music production, networking, and IT, what is the best strategy to market yourself on LinkedIn?
Multiple. This is where, when using the idea about what days you maybe post and helping to program your community per se. So if you know that, and just going back to this there may be putting yourself in those, using those verticals. So on Mondays, I might post, or you might post your music production. Maybe on Wednesday, you might talk more about the networking and the IT aspect. And then on, Fridays, actually Friday might not be a good day. It's not the best days and times to post on LinkedIn are Sunday, Tuesday through Thursday. So in any of those days, just posting some of your thoughts around something that's been released, back to what Alex said, something that you're working on. Always when you're showing, people love to see the journey and love to see how other people like your processes. So I'd highly recommend sharing content like that. That would be really helpful. Go ahead, Bill.
Well, I also say it's a good time when you're starting out and kind of branding yourself in the marketplace for anything. Do spend a little bit of time doing some self-reflection. Is there one aspect of your multiple skill set that you truly have an extra level of passion for? If you love, and I'm just going to pick the middle one, music production and music kind of system networking, and that is stronger in you than iOS development, for say, just make sure that is the thing you put out premium, because I've seen more people that I can tell you over the course of the many years of my career who got pigeonholed because they took a job in something that they were okay with but didn't love. And then as they build a reputation in that, they get more and more and more work in that sliver of the industry. And they end up feeling like, gosh, I wish I'd spent more time pushing myself into these other areas. I'm not saying you can't be a polyglot and do multiple things. And I understand everybody's, I do this and I do this and I also do this. But if you don't direct that, the marketplace can direct that for you, and that may or may not be your best long-term strategy. So read your heart before you go too far out there with I do everything really well. You could find that they don't value the thing that you really do as much as you do.
Go ahead, Jesse.
Yeah, I'd just add that it's kind of in the nature of virtual events and hybrid events and online events that the technical production team needs to know a lot of different disciplines in the audiovisual world. So I think it's not uncommon that people have a collection of skill sets. And Liberty, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that the headline portion of LinkedIn is a good place to list at least some specific set of those skills, because that might be where the search engine, looks for people, with those skills. That's what I do. I just put it all in the headline.
Yeah, no, excellent point. That yes, it is in the headline. We discussed that just when you put your profile into creator mode and using that job part to say in your headline, live stream, or in this case, iOS developer. I'd pick maybe one or two of them there, and I'm putting that in the headline. And then also you have kind of like a tagline part. If you want to do a little bit more of an explanation and that part of it, that would definitely help. And going back to what Bill shared about being careful, like doing that self-reflection and being careful of just putting everything out there, there's a saying like a confused mind doesn't buy. And so while you're marketing yourself or letting people know the things that you're most interested in, just know that human habit is like they need to, if they don't understand that, they'll just skip and go on to the next. So by doing that and kind of programming your content, that will help. And just really thinking about, well, while you're doing all of those items, what is your end goal? Like, which one of those verticals are you most passionate about? Are you trying to get a job in there? Because then industry, because then that's where you would want to share more of that content, because, your passion rises to the top. Alex?
Yeah, you definitely want to be careful of the too many things. I know as someone who just sees a lot of these go by, if someone contacts me and they've got definitely don't put looking for work, in my opinion. Like, just, this is what you do. Like, this is, this is what you do. You want to be kind of understated, in my opinion, on LinkedIn. I've been pretty deep into LinkedIn for whatever reason for a long, long time, like almost since the beginning. So it's just like, there's like kind of the old culture of people looking at it, and you don't want to see a long string of things that are there. Like, I'm looking for head of or audio designer or something that I can grok real quickly what you are. You may be I'm a lot of different things, but I don't put those up there, So, so you want to be careful, really, really careful of that process. And really think about, what you want to end up doing and be there, and know that also very few people are going to get a job from their LinkedIn alone. Like, it is part of an ecosystem of working inside of a community. It is, I will say that if you don't have a LinkedIn, people think that's very odd. I run into people every once in a while that don't have LinkedIn and don't have it filled out or whatever. And I'm like, wow, that's super weird. So it is weird not to be there, but it is. And I would say that LinkedIn in my world has largely replaced having your own website. Like, this tells you this is a place that says this is what I do and this is my background and so on and so forth. But I use it as a place that says I'm real, as opposed to trying to get work from that place.
Yeah, that's a great point there of being a part of the bigger piece of the pie, because you should be reaching out to people in your community, letting them know what you're doing. And yes, this is where once you're introduced, that people go to vets, like, are you really who you say they are? And they'll, go to your social media, LinkedIn being one of them. And just to add to this too, Jesse does a great job of commenting on people's posts, because I even learn about other, women videographers and producers, because he's shared valuable content or valuable comments on other people's posts. And because we're connected, that then pops up in my feed. And I'm like, oh my goodness. And, learning. So even as you're on the platform and you're building your community. It's also helping people and sharing value for others as well. Next question.
Vienna is back from Australia, and Vienna this time says, what are some absolute no-nos on LinkedIn?
Go ahead, Alex.
I'll be interested to see what Liberty says about some of these. But I'll say a couple that, from my perspective, again, as someone who's been on LinkedIn for well over a decade, not having a relatively normal image of yourself is something I would not suggest. Like, people get real creative with LinkedIn is not that place. It's not Twitter. It's not YouTube or whatever. Having a picture of your head that is you, that is well lit, that is a great image. Now, some people will get into a place in a location that looks kind of cool, but almost never. So wide shots in that area, you can't tell who that person is. But a headshot, and it can be outside, it can be in front of white, or it can be in front of whatever you want. But a headshot that someone feels like they can get a sense of you, I think is really important. I don't ever put any of the little edges that people put on their LinkedIn of looking for work or hiring or anything else. I know that's a big cultural thing, so I wouldn't say that's an absolute no-no, but I always think it's weird. As the old guard of LinkedIn, I was like, that's weird. So I would never put a long string of things in my title, because people like me will just ignore it after that. Like, we'll just ignore you after that. Like, it's just like, oh, they're not doing anything. Because when you say a lot, you're doing lots of things, we hear you're not doing anything, and so you always want to kind of come across as not, as you're doing pretty well. Don't be desperate on LinkedIn. It's not a good smell. The other thing that I will say is that I refrain generally from personal posts. People will post things on it. I tend not to. I wouldn't say it's an absolute no-no. I just post things that I work on, or things that I think that people will be interested in. I actually don't even, that's generally just things that I think people will find cool. But that's kind of where I post everything. The last thing I'll say is I would never post politics on LinkedIn. I don't generally post politics on unless it's in telecommunications or in our industry. I will rarely post anything publicly about politics. But the one place that I would never post politics is LinkedIn. It's just devastating. Because it doesn't matter whether the person agrees with you or doesn't agree with you. Employers will see you as a loose cannon. Like, it is, if you're going to post it on LinkedIn, employers will be like, whoa, and so you're willing to put it on LinkedIn, they'll view you very quickly as a loose cannon. On Twitter, they won't care. Or they might not do that. I mean, you just remember that all employers now search all of your social. Like, you just need to know that every major employer searches everything you posted everywhere all the time. Like, that's bread and butter for the HR team. So just think about everything you're putting online. I've had people bring up tweets that I can't even find. Like, tweets 8 years prior to when I did it in 2008 when Twitter was barely a thing, and I posted something. 2016, it's like, people are like, I can't believe you posted this. I'm like, I don't even remember what that was. Like, they wouldn't even tell me what it was. They're like, there's a horrible post. And I'm like, I don't know what I said. So you want to be very, very careful about social posts in general, but definitely LinkedIn. It's a professional social network, not a social network. Anyway.
Yeah, and plus one on all of that, I just want to bring in to your comment on if you're searching for a job. John Snyder says, if you're looking for work and seem desperate, whether LinkedIn or elsewhere, the hiring manager starts looking for red flags. So just the cosign there. Some of the no-nos, we've kind of touched on some of spamming. When you actually reach out to someone to be a connection, don't let the first message be like this long page in their inbox that is, then I want to do this and that and you're selling. I've gotten a lot of messages that are selling, and I now then regret adding the person as that. So be thoughtful. Some of the messages that I have received from new requests are like, I see that going back to the intentionality, I see that you're working with kids and you're creating content. Here are some things that I've seen lately, like the whole idea of sharing value. So just from that end of things, LinkedIn has created a lot of tools for us, like the hero image, like your header image. Use that real estate, because when somebody clicks on your profile and it just being bare, there's value there. However, when you use that, don't have a lot of text on it. These are basic fundamental graphic design points, but don't have a lot of text. That makes it hard to read. Have an engaging image there that if you want to reinforce again, live streaming, video, virtual production, and having some keywords there is helpful. Have a profile photo, especially in this day and age of just identity and whatnot. Having a great headshot, like actually put a photo there, that's valuable. But I would say the biggest one is a big one of like the spamming that easily can deter people from even wanting to connect with you after that. Alex?
Yeah, to get to that, like if you ask to link to somebody and they say yes, and then you immediately follow up with something you want from them, they may just ignore you forever, or they may actually just kick you out. But that is a pretty serious no-no. Is don't link to somebody. If you may want something, but don't do it that way. Like an immediate response with something that you want from them is just not gonna go well.
Right. Next question.
Looks like Chris Reidner Douglas Carmichael. How can you tailor your resume and communication strategy to finding questions and or freelance work in multiple areas of interest?
Did it say, sorry, Alex?
Yeah, you really need to, it's not really tailoring that. It's doing those things and then having them in your resume and doing lots of things that show, I did this, I did this, I did this, I did this, I did this. And you want to be able to, a lot of LinkedIn is going to be about building that group. And it's really hard. It's hard to get a job when you don't have a job. It's hard to get something when you don't have this. It's hard to get, but you have to find ways, whether it's volunteering, working on projects, but you have to have real projects that are sitting in there. And that's how you build up your resume. And you can do it in different areas. I mean, if you look at mine, there's lots of different areas and that are there. But you have to get it. It's not really tailoring your resume as it is doing things that you can put in your resume.
Yeah, and speaking the language of that space, because if you are looking for whatever, going back to video production, just making sure a lot of your language is that some people highly underestimate the value of being able to show that I'm in this space and I can speak to, whether it be high level solutions or even the low level ones, and just making sure that you're showing that you're a problem solver, like all of those things that when I'm looking for people and I look at their resumes, I'm looking at what problems have they solved. So to Alex's point, when you can share and demonstrate the problems that you've solved, how you were able to increase, like some of those keywords are like increasing, or that really helps and puts in a great light of how you would be of value to the team that you're looking to join. Next question.
Chris Widener comes up now from Lafayette, Indiana. He says, I don't think my LinkedIn profile accurately shows my skills. What's the best way to reflect skills other than posting with this shirt? And he has a link there to a funny shirt. Should I read it or should you read it out?
You can read it. It's great.
You can read it. I'm trying to pull it up.
Oh my gosh.
The line on it is, if I wasn't a good electrician, I'd be dead now.
That is awesome. And that could be in your feature, like putting that in your feature, that it shows some of your humor. But that's a good one. Go ahead, Alex.
Yeah, it comes down to with LinkedIn, it's really hard to build. You want to be just saying what you did, and it may vary, and it may be those things. Of course, if you're focused on one thing or another, then you really have to. You want to think about pairing things off. I don't have everything I've ever done on LinkedIn. If you come to my LinkedIn profile, I have what I think would be the most interesting for people who I'm interacting with. But there's a lot of things in there. I have a lot of things in there, but I don't have like every job I've ever done, because that would be too many. And it would be confusing. And that gets back to what Liberty was talking about before. It'd be confusing if I told you the 8 other jobs that I didn't put in LinkedIn, because they don't line up with that.
And Chris, it goes back to how you how you demonstrate those skills and how you show them. So that is if you do some time lapses, some snackable video content or images of you working, that can show the non-tangibles around your work and you on site or you on the go, just some of those ways of showcasing your skill set. And I'm pretty confident there are some ways of, like, in the experience area of LinkedIn for you to be able, again, to share some of your wins or to describe how you made an impact to said company and or on said project. So your experience section is just like the resume section, but it's just on LinkedIn. So that might be helpful as well. Next question.
Douglas Carmichael up next. He says, how can you effectively market yourself when your career history is, quote, unconventional, close quote? And he notes this is common for those on the spectrum and with other disabilities.
That's a great question, Douglas. Go ahead, Alex.
You can't market yourself only on LinkedIn. I mean, that's what I'll say is that you can't, it is part, as we said before, it's part of an ecosystem of what you're doing. And it's kind of that pin in the ground that kind of guides people to what you're working on or what you've done. The best way to build up your LinkedIn is to do things. And so whether that's volunteer work or it's stuff that you can show, but you have to get out there and build. You have to build that resume. You have to get things out there. And so I know that it's one of those things like, how do you start if you haven't started? But volunteering in places like whether it's office hours and the things that we do, or volunteering in local things to get work. There's always people that are looking for people that are willing to volunteer in lots and lots of different organizations. And that's how you rebuild that. It's very, very difficult. Right now it's easier, but it's when people see long career history, things missing in career histories, it's a massive red flag for employers. Like it is, like you just have to get that's like not the biggest red flag, but it's a pretty big one. And so political posts are higher. so anyway, but that they worry about that, and if you don't have a good explanation, they really worry about it. And the best way to fill that back in is to start doing things. And people still tend to hire people that they know. That if you get a volunteer job and then treat it like I used to volunteer, I mean, almost everything that I have ever gotten into in my entire life, I started by doing it for free. Like I want to do something, I want to go this direction, and I'm just going to do it. And I used to, we've joked for many years of, free as the straw that drank 1,000 milkshakes. And so I would do things for people, and I'd learn how to do it. Again, the good example is I was doing incredible amounts of work on this AOL forum, answering people's questions. Like it was like 8 hours a day, just so you know, like it was for months, maybe almost a year. 8 hours a day I spent fixing other people's problems in broadcast. I didn't know anything about 3D. Like I just would like learn it and bang my head against the wall until I had an answer for them, and I ended up at Lucasfilm, and so the thing is that so the main thing is that you have to figure out a way to serve that market. LinkedIn will not do it for you, and you will not be able to do it on it alone. You have to really figure out a way to be in that. And then you have to, if you get those opportunities, you have to treat them like you're getting paid $100 an hour. Like that you're going to show up on time. You're never, ever going to cancel. like you can't cancel jobs. So even if it's volunteer, if you say you're going to be there, you're there. You're there on time. You're effective. You're not wandering around. You don't leave early unless it makes sense. You don't you treat it like you're getting paid big bucks. You do that and you'll find yourself into all kinds of things.
Yeah, I'm going to take a moment to some great comments happening over here. John Snyder says, try to connect specific skills in the unconventional roles and include those skills on your profile. Use LinkedIn to build/maintain relationships instead of as your primary marketing tool. Be ready in an interview to explain gaps in your career. It will almost certainly be asked. So that's a great point there. And Dr. Clark also says, think about offering a case description of a music production gig that you have done that also involved applying another subset of your skills, iOS development or IT. Like, Douglas, this is your opportunity to tell your story. And by the case studies, really, I second and plus 100 on that, because this is is where you get to explain, dissect, and show your brilliance as you do on office hours, and then just showcasing it on LinkedIn. But as Alex has said a number of times, it's not your only LinkedIn is not your only source. It is a part of your bigger relationship building strategy. Next question.
Looks like it comes from John Snyder in Reno, Nevada. And John says, what are the key benefits for the premium version of LinkedIn, and who should consider paying for it, purchasing it?
Go ahead, Alex.
I believe, I'm not certain, but I believe you get LinkedIn Learning with it. So the premium version comes with LinkedIn Learning. You get to see everybody that views. I don't think you get to norm. I've been in premium for so long, I don't know, but I think that in the regular version, you don't get to see every person that looks at your profile. I think in premium, you get to see literally anybody who looks at your profile. You get a little like, this person looked at your profile, and that's useful to know. It's useful. We'll just say that, because then you can also reach out to them. They're interested in you for whatever reason, and you can just say hi. I wouldn't do it the same day because that's super weird, because most people don't know that you can do that. And so, but if you ping them a week later or something and just say, hey, it was great working with you or whatever, a lot of times that'll generate a conversation because they were thinking about you, and then not the same day, but a week later, you happen to ping them, and then the conversation starts. But don't ask them for anything. Just talk. Just talk.
Yeah, and Vienna, that would be one of those. That was a good one, Alex, of like the timing of when you reach out to people. So yes, not the same day that they accepted it all of a sudden. So just a side note there.
It's just general social etiquette, but we lose it sometimes when we're in the, Yeah.
Yeah. And so you get a number of more in-mails. The viewing is extremely valuable, especially if you know that you've been pushing out content and you're seeing that people found you. So then maybe you can follow up or again, not the same day, but then you're able to maybe peruse some of their content as well. And there are if I remember correctly, there are two types of premium, or two or three. So there's one where it's like you're able to do Sales Navigator, and then there's a recruiting one. So I haven't used if you're looking for a job or that recruiting aspect of it, but the Sales Navigator and using that going into that version, that just helps with prospecting, and again, the number of emails as well. So just high level, those are the different versions. And I think, and the benefit, so then those being the benefits of having that, because I actually got rid of sales. Now I'm going to get it back later on because we're working on some things, but now it's like I'm able to see in the first few minutes, like one or two people, and then the next 5 or 6, I'm unable to see who they are, or it blocks out. It just says founder from such city, but that doesn't really give you a lot of information. So LinkedIn's way of teasing it out that go ahead and get the premium so you can see exactly who it is that's trying to look at your profile. Next question.
Next one comes to us from John Snyder, again in Reno, Nevada. What do you recommend regarding frequency of posting and or sharing and or commenting on content?
Go ahead, Alex.
More often than me. That's what I do. Like I post every once in a while. But I will admit, I have over 3,000 people that I'm connected to, and a lot of them are deep in the industry. And so I will admit that probably more than anything else, I worry I just want to make sure that it's good. Like I make it good if I'm going to post it. And so that oftentimes keeps me from posting. I'm just like, because this really is like, LinkedIn really is all my peers, and because I do keep it relatively fluid. And, if I finish a great meeting with somebody, I go up to LinkedIn because that's the time to do that. Like that's the ninja thing to do with LinkedIn is you have a great meeting, you do a great project with someone, connect with them because they'll remember who you are for about the next week. So it is really a huge group of people. But I'm very careful about what I post because of it.
Yeah, John, I like how you said too of like posting, sharing, commenting on, because it's more than just posting. So if we start with posting roughly 2 to 3 times a week, know who your audience that you're trying to reach or connect with. And if you're really busy and you're posting every day, that could also be not that if you're really busy, if you are maybe an exec or a director and you're posting every day, that might even be like, well, what are you doing with your time? So there might be some questions or flags around that. Commenting, you should spend, Cher Jones is going to be on next week and she's going to talk about branding, and she uses LinkedIn heavily. And that commenting, spending 5 or 10 minutes a day or every other day commenting, because especially if you're posting content and someone shares a comment and it takes you some days to respond, we want that instant gratification just naturally as human beings. So if you turn on your notifications so that you can spend some time at the end of the day, possibly, but just within that 24 hours, because you can test it out and just see how many people actually continue to comment on your posts, knowing that it takes you so long to respond to them. So commenting 5 to 10 minutes a day or every other day, sharing. LinkedIn also added a new feature that you can share and add a comment to it, or you can just reshare. I know that there are some people, they're sharing 3 or 4 times a day. So I'd always saying, test your audience, but starting with like 2 to 3 posts a week if you haven't shared, and then knowing your audience that if going up to even 5 times a week can be good. So those are just some of the numbers I've seen and we've used as well. Next question.
Tony Mobley in Noonan, Georgia says, Liberty, what is your process for your short video that you do on LinkedIn?
It's called repurposing content. So that's either TikTok, really trying to grow TikTok community, but Instagram, and just doing some reels, and the reels that make sense for LinkedIn, I'll share on LinkedIn. So community-wise, Instagram is really like mompreneurs or women in business and dancing and traveling. So showing that content, but the pieces of content where I might be talking about gadgets or technology, those ones I will share on LinkedIn because it makes sense for that audience. Because most of the people in my LinkedIn community are startups, directors, executives, and just curating, that presence a little bit more. So the fun-loving, the more technical content that's short and snackable, 60 seconds, and then posting that on LinkedIn. So for someone like you, Tony, that could be cutting up. I think we've kind of touched on this in the past of like just cutting up some sound bites from your conversations with Tony Mobley and putting that on LinkedIn. That's something that a lot of YouTubers do, is getting more out of their YouTube content and putting that on LinkedIn. Bill?
I think this is a little bit, to me, the busman's holiday thing. I think a lot of us do a lot more video than we think about it. I mean, we're on office hours all the time, but we're also doing a lot of other meetings in video. We're going places and working on projects. And how many of us have taken our own camera and just taken stills of our jobs when we're on set, if it's appropriate and if you're not under non-disclosure or anything, or asking somebody else, I just want to stand up and say a few words like, I'm really excited to be working at this thing, or whatever. I mean, we have these cameras in our pockets and we don't leverage them ourselves as much as we might to be able to create small snippets of video content that show what we can do, how we do it, and why. So I would encourage everybody, think about your marketing in terms of, am I doing something that could benefit me and is appropriate to capture a very quick snippet of for my own personal marketing material? We just forget about that too much, I think.
Yeah, Jesse.
I think also there's opportunity for more educational pieces around what's possible with virtual and hybrid events. There's always a lot of time dedicated to explaining the different formats and options for people. Like, am I going to be able to see people on Zoom or hear them? Or, what's the broadcast going to look like? Are we going to be able to integrate people that are in the room with the online group and do sort of what I call kind of cross-pollination, and things like that. How well will we be able to see the folks online if we're in the room, and sort of a lot of those questions come up. So it'd be great to see more of those demo videos of a bit of behind the scenes, on virtual events and hybrids.
And just to come back with just, your end goal, just thinking about your end goal. And so therefore that process of what's the story that I'm trying to share to my community? Am I trying to show thought leadership, and am I trying to get a job? So I'm showing skill set. And once you have that in mind, then now working backwards, what kind of content do I already have? So start where you are, and then seeing what can I cut up? Can I just use a photo? Bill mentioned like taking photos on site and maybe putting some a sound like a voiceover on it, not making it complicated. So then that way you're more apt to be consistent with it. So with all these strategies, consistency being the underlying value that's really going to help to push you forward and keep you top of mind in people's minds. And for our last question.
Our last one comes from Douglas Carmichael. Thank you, Douglas. Would posting sample audio and or video content you have worked on your LinkedIn profile be appropriate?
Alex?
I would. You can post those samples. I think that it may be a link to it, or here's where I usually put like a link to a website or something like that and put it on there. I wouldn't necessarily put it in there or posting it as a post. And then I would also, the main thing is that always get third-party review of what you're putting up there. Sometimes if it's something that hasn't been released to the public, just get people's opinion about it. I mean, the main thing is remember that anything that you post on LinkedIn is defining you to everybody. So, you want to, and people, the hard part with posting video of your work is that, or audio of your work, is that we are awash with incredible content, and people will compare it not to what you did as an individual, but to what they listen to on the radio and what they watch on TV. So you just want to be careful of, of making sure that it's really full, and it's better to be short than long with, just keep it to what you can do extremely well.
Good point. Bill?
Just a real quick one. I wrote an article probably 20 years ago on demo reels, and it resonated much farther than I had ever thought it would. And the part of it was about only claiming the part of it that you actually worked on. If you're putting up a piece and you were the title designer on this fabulous looking video, not to leave the impression that you're able to create the fabulous looking video, letting them know you're able to create the content, the graphics for it, because I saw too many people who were asked to do what they had put out as their presentation and they couldn't actually do it. And I've heard back from people who said, I put this up on my demo reel. They asked me to do it. Hey, Bill, can you help me do this? Because that was a piece that you kind of created. And they got themselves into the tunnel of over-promising where they could under-deliver. And when I wrote that, it was surprising how many people came back and go, yeah, that is pretty important. Let them know honestly what you're able to do, and don't get over your skis in this area sometimes.
And Alex?
I'll only say the caveat is that I told Lucasfilm that I knew how to use After Effects. I did not know how to use After Effects. And so like I because I was like, I can do all these other things, but I barely knew how to use After. I knew a little bit of After Effects. I didn't know very much. I literally I spent a bunch of money and I went to LA, and Chris and Trish Myers had their After Effects 3-day course, and I took that and I diligently worked through the entire thing. And I remember my second day there, my supervisor, who does know how to use After Effects, was there, and he goes, "Oh, I got to figure this out." And he goes, "Oh no." I said, "Oh, it's just this quick key." And I gave him the quick key that I had learned like 2 days before, but of course I just made it like it was nothing. And he's like, "Oh, you really do know After Effects." So sometimes you can fake it till you make it.
Fake it till you make it. I was going to say,
but be very careful. Be very careful about it, because of that, I was pretty sure I was going to get fired like every day for the first year and a half.
Pro tip: don't lie to Lucasfilm.
Right.
I did though. I did. I was like, I just figured I can figure this out.
The exception.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, it's a bold strategy, because if you can't come up fast and you've promised,
here was the other
Alex
side of
could.
That. Here's the other side of that. 110 hours for 18 months. Like just like that's how I made up for the fact that I didn't know how I was doing it. It was 7 days a week. It was long, maybe not 110 every week, but probably at least minimum of 80 to 90 hours a week, and only telling them that I was doing 40. So I was going way faster than everybody thought. But it was like, it was a painful moment. So if you're going to go into something that you don't know how to do, you have to back it up with clear your entire schedule because you're going to have to figure this out, and you're going to have to you're not going to do it on the 9 to 5 or the clock that they think you're going to do it on. If you take a job that you don't know, you can get away with it, but you have to know that you're going to have to do what it takes to do that. And that might be spending money on training, which I did. I might be spending, incredible hours to make up for the fact that you're incompetent. And then eventually become competent if you work hard enough at it. So that's what I did.
There it is. I just want to quickly add to that between Dr. Clark and John Snyder has said similar things, even better than just posting content. Post the content and explain your process and decisions made. So that giving you just an extra edge of why and the expertise that you have learned. So thank you all. We are at the end of another fantastic show. Thank you to our producers for your questions. As always, the comments and all of that engagement taking place there. To our panelists, thank you for sharing your stories and your feedback and your insights. And our back end crew, you know how much we appreciate you. Thank you. And we're going to head into after hours. So if you want to know what's going on for the rest of the week, head over to officehours.global, and we'll see you soon. Bye.
Look at all those people.
Great questions today. Thank you, everyone.
That first hour was hectic.
32 questions, 60 minutes.
I don't know. I just don't know. People get tired of it if I remind them in Discord, but I might do it for a little while because it's really effective.